Hopefully this works. And we're live. Welcome to paraglidingtalk.com. I'm your host, Robert Michiels. So glad that you're here. And you found a great place to learn about paragliding and paramotoring and all things flying realistically. You're joined tonight by Craig Taylor, Sean Nafsker, also Anthony Peregringo is in the house. Larry from Para Orange Products is also with us. Hey, Larry. And we have a special guest tonight, a very special guest. Actually, one of the very first people that I talked to when I got into free flight paragliding, and that is Jordan Neidinger. He's a local too, so I'm pretty fired up that he's here with us, and I really appreciate it. He's been on the show twice now. This is his third time being on the show, and every single time that he's come on, he's brought something excellent to the table. And so I'm stoked tonight to have him on again. We're going to pick his brain about weather and talk about all things flying. He's got a great background between free flight and paramotoring, and he also has a long history of excellence with training. He has a school here in Southern California, and so he is going to get. I'm going to give a link. There's a link, I believe, in the description if I have this right, and you can get a hold of him at what's the website again, Jordan?
That's flywithjordan.info.
Flywithjordan.info. So I think I made the mistake of putting .com, so it's .info. Check that out. If you're interested in getting some training here in Southern California, you can reach out to Jordan on the website. And we're going to have a great show tonight. We got so many sponsors, and we're going to break up the sponsorship. This show is brought to you by ppgsmoke.com. Ryan Roberts has created all kinds of stuff for our flying needs with every component he's added to the flying community. It's been with excellence, from smoke machines to the paramotor strobe lights, lamels, chase cams, even floats. And he has the best products on the market right now, and he did it all while keeping the cost very reasonable. So go check out his website. It's ppgsmoke.com. This show is also brought to you by paramotorprops.com. If you're looking to get great deal on props, you bust one, it's going to happen. Probably if you're a new pilot, a couple times. Great deals on props. Go to paramotorprops.com. We'll just throw it in there too. Go check out paraorangeproducts.com since Larry's here with us. If you have any questions for him at all during the duration of the show, ask him in the chat. He'll answer and get you squared away. He's got all kinds of great things on his website. One convenient location, paraorangeproducts.com. So glad that you're here tonight. Jordan, thank you so much for taking the time and coming. I'm stoked that you've joined us. Can you just give me a quick rundown on your background and how you got into the sport? And then we're going to talk about some safety stuff.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I started in Texas with paramotor, and I had about 20 minutes of kiting lessons, and then I was set off on my own to figure out the rest. And I kind of taught myself. That was 2009 off of YouTube videos, and it gave me a really good background to get into teaching because, you know, I understand what it's like to kind of see this from a new perspective, and to not have the formal training. I can see the difference now in somebody like myself who didn't have that training and then somebody who does. And when I came to California, initially I was going to teach paramotor. And pretty much when I got out here, people were like, why would we have a motor? We got all these mountains and all this stuff to fly for free. And it took me like a year to really like absorb that message. And I was like, yeah, why do I have a motor? Because like 20 minutes away is the best flying in the country. So yeah, then I started getting into paragliding at Saboba. And then while I was there for a little while, I picked up my instructor rating for basics, started teaching mini wings. And I was teaching paramotor there too. And then at Saboba, I taught myself how to hang glide just by reading the manual, which was pretty cool. It's like 80% of it you already know how to do because you can fly in a paraglider. You just have to learn the airframe, you know, the different controls on the airframe. And after that, I went to work to Torrey Pines 2.5 years, did a couple thousand tandems while I was out there. And then came to Marshall, Andy Jackson Airfield, where I'm at now, set up a flight school. And I'm currently on the board trying to get into the president spot on the Crestline Soaring Society. And if everything goes well, man, I'd love to expand the school to take on some hang gliding activities too. Right now, we're just doing instruction and paramotor paragliding.
Ooh, I like it. I didn't
Yeah.
know that you self-taught hang gliding. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I don't.
and it's weird because a lot of people, and you're seeing this now, right? They're going to make this distinction between, oh, I'm a free flight pilot, or I'm a motor pilot, or I fly hang gliders. And it's funny because a lot of people that have already made that determination what they're going to be, they think that the other guys are crazy, right? But it's unanimous. Like paramotor guys think that paragliding is crazy and dangerous, and vice versa. And we see that in hang gliding too. But if you like to be in the air, you love your air time, it's just another way of doing it, different conditions, and if it's going to be headwinds and choppy and crazy turbulence, I'd rather be on a hang glider, to be honest, just because it's got a little more rigidity. But all in all, it's just flying, man. And reading through that manual, that was easy, dude. Most of the stuff that they were talking about, like a pilot would already know that about the weather and setting up approaches and whatnot. So I think it's just a hop, skip, and a jump for most people, and they don't know that.
What manual are you talking about?
There's a hang gliding manual, just like paragliding, the art of paragliding, but there's a hang gliding version. And then,
Really?
yeah, actually one of the best weather chapters I've ever read was chapter 5 of the hang gliding manual.
So it's actually called the hang gliding manual.
Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. It's hang gliding something.
I'm going to look it up for sure.
I'm still alive, so it must have worked,
Yeah. That is awesome. By the way, I really like your little short videos that you make all the time. They're really clean, well edited. I really enjoy them. Those are
Thank you.
keep them
Thank you.
coming,
I
man.
do that on my phone, and I'm just trying to tell that story of people becoming pilots. They're dreamers that are becoming pilots, and I want to tell that story to everybody. And my hope is to find that guy that didn't know about paragliding until he saw my video, and then he's like, okay, I'm doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. There is a question that popped up in the chat, and this is for the new guys. Jim CR120 asked this question. He said, "What are the ranges in wind speeds / gusts that you recommend for noobs?"
Well, I go over this almost every day in my classes, but if you're really new and you're starting off just forward launching and doing some transit flights, then I would recommend nothing over 7 or 8, just so that it's manageable for you in that stage. And as you progress, then you're getting into reverse kiting. But the wind gust, I wouldn't want to see more variation than 5 or 6. If I was a brand new pilot.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I've been in some 10 to 12, 15 mile an hour stuff that will get your attention. Anything above, in my opinion, anything above 15 is a little scary.
Yeah, and when you start flying mini wings, you got to come up with a little bit of a different metric, because the wind that would scare you in a paraglider is sometimes acceptable in a mini wing to be soaring on. And I remember pulling my Firefly. It's not even really a mini wing; it's one of the larger wings, and it was blowing 28. And it was that was perfect for that wing and that wing loading. But it was sure scary, spending a few years in paragliding and then saying, okay, I'm going to fly in 28 miles per hour now.
There was a couple in the last year. Yeah, it's 7 or 8 miles per hour, Jim. And it's interesting that the dynamics kind of change when you start off. There's a lot of ground handling, a lot of kiting involved, right? So you're wanting to learn your wing. If you don't do that and you just keep on going, kind of like, okay, well, I can fly now after work, and I've just got to figure out how I'm going to launch. I know it's going to be strong, but I want to get in the air with my friends. You really appreciate having kited a bunch before you went up there. It's funny. My mom was talking to me before the show. By the way, she's the new PR person for the show.
Oh, really?
Yep. She got promoted today, and she goes, "Does that mean?" She goes, "That mean pay rate?" And I said, "No, That means personal relations. So, but when she was asking, she goes, honey, what's kiting? What's the difference? What does kiting mean? Is that for like new people? And I said, that's for everybody. But yes, you want to kite a lot in the beginning so that you don't fumble when you're on launch and you don't look like the knucklehead. And it's a important thing. So that's I answered your question, Mom, and I gave you the shout out because I know you paid me to do that. Thank you, Matthew Pesk. Pesk. Sorry, I always mess up your name. It's like Pesci. We were at the Salton Sea flying together, and I got to fly with him a couple times, and he's such a champ. And thank you for your service, by the way, Matthew. We harassed him the whole camping trip about his job, and he has an amazing job, and I think most of us are jealous of what he gets to do every day. But anyways, I want to talk about safety. One of the things and the reason for this show is because I had a Cascade event. I was flying in stuff that was too strong for me, in my opinion. Now looking back, and I misjudged the weather on the models. We were looking at the weather, and it was saying that it was going to be pretty mild, 8-mile-an-hour winds, and the thermal index was low. We weren't getting any gusts or anything like that. But it turned on really strong. The thermals were super strong, and we weren't even supposed to get above launch. And I was way above launch at Palomar when the event happened. So my question to you is, how is it, and what do you connect to your being in the sport this long now? What is it that you're doing to be safer, and what can you give us to make it the long haul in this sport?
Well, let me just touch on the kiting thing that you were talking about, because that's one of the biggest factors in my mind is control of your aircraft on the launch. And what I tell my students is don't look at kiting as a means to an end, right? Treat it like almost a separate activity, a separate sport that you just enjoy doing that. You enjoy that time. It's not effort, it's rewarding because you're learning. And, don't look at it as something I have to do just to get off the launch. I see that, and I won't, get too specific, but I do see that a lot with pilots coming from other countries that sometimes they're just in a hurry, right, to blast through that reverse and just turn around and spin and go. And that really kind of closes the opportunity for you to check out your lines, make sure you're not taking hitchhikers with you, or, check your airspace. There's all kinds of things that you're ignoring if you're just doing the Hail Mary, trying to get through that. But to, get onto what you were saying about being blindsided by the thermic updraft potential of the day, in the very beginning, and I think we see this a lot in paramotor and mini wings especially, is that we're just looking at the two factors, wind speed and direction. And, we also need to be concerned with variation in those two things. But the potential for the atmosphere to overdevelop, that's going to be a seasonal thing, as well as it could be hourly. And if we have frontal activity coming in or shifting the overall wind direction. So, what I tell my students is, once you're comfortable judging speed and direction and variation in those two things, you need to start looking into the development of the day, right? And we can look on those RAS tables. We have several weather charts that make it really easy for us to see when that's going to get rowdy or out of control. But another thing to look for is if you have a significant change in the wind direction over the time period, right? So if, like at our site, we could have north blowing hard, and then just in one day, after like 4 days of north, we'll have a south. And it may not even be the entire day. It could just be like 3/4 of the day. And then it goes back to north. In that day, when you look, you're going to see very low wind speeds, and it's going to look like a beginner launch, 5 to 10 miles per hour blowing south. But that might be a day where it really stacks up. You could have convergence on a large scale, or you could just have, colder atmosphere. We're in the season now where we have a very cold atmosphere, and yet we still have a lot of sunlight hitting the ground because we're in this desert, climate. So those are the conditions that would give you a pretty rowdy ride. And, in the beginning, right, we just say stay out of the air in the middle of the day. But after we learn how to read exactly what we're getting into. So it just comes down to understanding the data before you get into the air, right?
100%. Well said. This question just popped in my head. How often would you say that? Well, let me back up. We were at Salton Sea Flying, and the wind started to kind of pick up on was Saturday, no, Friday in the afternoon, and so um, it just worked out that I didn't know I was going to be flying someone's motor until the afternoon, and then I was just stoked, and it was like perfectly kiteable and was not strong. It was probably blowing about 8 miles an hour, but a lot of guys were grounded because it was that midday, and I launched, flew around. There was a little bump here and there, but it was really nice, really fun. And when I landed, somebody made a statement. They said, "Oh my gosh, you launched into the, the peak of the day. What you're wasn't that crazy?" And I was like, "That was super like buttery niceness. That was
Oh,
like
you used
glass
the
off at
super
Blossom."
word.
And what's that?
You used the super word.
What? Oh, super, super. We were camping with them. I mean, so when it went down to business, I landed and I was thinking to myself, like, that wasn't bad at all. And a lot of guys were intimidated by the midday. How often do you think that it's flyable midday when and I'm saying this because there are a lot of people that are watching that just won't chance it, won't consider the weather. Just I fly in the mornings and that's all I'm going to do. I don't want to find out. I'm just going to play it safe. How often do you think it's flyable?
Well, if we're having a fly-in the middle of winter, right? I mean, that's going to be probably a pretty good season to fly midday as opposed to flying in the summer. I think what you're seeing there, and I see that a lot in paramotor world, because they're not looking for unstable air, right? They're not looking for routing conditions, and you end up breaking a lot more stuff if you have a bad landing in a paramotor. So, for the most part, those guys are looking for just morning and evening. And I actually start my weather class by mocking the paramotor mindset a little bit, just saying, here's the daily curve, and then you fly in the morning, you fly in the evening, and okay, we're done with weather class, right? And
Yeah.
that's it. But now you've seen, starting with canopies and paragliding, that there are plenty of days that you could fly midday. And add to that, the Salton Sea has its own weather. It's
Yeah.
below sea level. It's got a nice body of water to help maintain some of the temperature. And I find that it's one of the places that you would be able to do that and get away with it quite frequently. But if you just go a few miles north of Salton Sea, into India and all that, right? Yeah, then the weather changes a little bit more dramatically, and the winds come on a little stronger as you get towards the pass, and it just plays out a lot differently. But that's what I see a lot, though, man. Paramotor guys think that paragliding is crazy because you would launch at 3, and fly till 5 or something, right? It's just, but you're just looking for different air. And then also, now you're not scared of a few bumps, because you know exactly what that means and what's going to happen next. But
Yeah.
when
Free
I started,
gas.
yeah, right. When I started paramotor in Texas, I didn't have any clue what was coming next. And so the little bumps made me freak out all the time. I'd be looking at my canopy trying to, and then I realized at some point, dude, you don't even know what you're going to do if something happens to that canopy. So just quit looking at it.
Yeah, yeah. Quit staring at it.
Right.
That's funny. Well, we've got a couple more. I want to give a couple more shouts for one, which is Mike Cotter and Fly My PPG. If you're in the Michigan area, you get professional training through his school. Mike and his team can get you the training that you're going to need. If you want to get a hold of them, there's a link in the description. And the show is also brought to you by Nebraska PPG. Josh Bowden has a school in Nebraska. And if you're trying to get some top-notch training, sign up with Josh and his team today. There's also a link in the description to get to his school. And I do want to say thank you, Josh, for letting me fly your equipment. He had some student equipment. He let me fly the Maverick 185, the Moster 185 setup from Parajet. Really nice, man. If I think at this point I'm leaning towards Parajet. It seems like such a nice setup. But anyways, um, very cool that he let me use that stuff. And the show's also brought to you by the Tri-State Skywalkers. If you're in the Indiana, Kentucky, or Ohio area, you can reach out to Brandon McCloud and join a flying club. So it'll be good for you. It'll help you to grow in the sport and be a safer pilot. If you're interested in joining the Tri-State Skywalkers, you can follow the link in the description. And so, hey, are we everybody tracking here? We did something a little bit different, and we sent out you should have got an invitation about a half an hour earlier. So let me know in the description if you got that invite a half an hour before the show. I'm interested to know if YouTube's doing its job. So Jordan, what take us through some of the pre-flighting things that you do that you would say, you know what, this is how I remember. I'll give you an example. I had this horrible forgetfulness when it came to that lower strap in my, the little string that just closes your pod. I'm talking
Right.
about, and it's below the knees. It's not like a critical piece, right? And so in somewhere in my subconscious, I thought, it's not that big of a deal if it flaps open. I can just I'll maintain, get some altitude, and then I'll fix it, right? And then one day, it curled up and wrapped around some other lines in there. And then so I launched and I tried to get into the harness, and it was like my feet were like this, like all balled up. And it almost caught my feet, so that if I was even going to spin around and try to top land real quick, I would have been in trouble. And I literally, I had to force a landing before I could go that day. We were going to go cross country, and I couldn't fix it in the air. I had to, and I side hill landed to fix that. So I learned a lesson from that. What do you have for those type of things that you would say that you've learned, and now it's a part of, no matter what, this is how I pre-flight?
Yeah, I have actually a really similar experience. I used to take off without my speed bar connected all the time. And it didn't seem like a big deal to have those things flopping around until one time I had the little sister clip go through my A riser and start pulling on my leading edge with all my body weight.
Oh.
And then I was like, you know what? I can never let that happen again, because that was just silly. But I tell my students, and I come from military aviation, and they run checklists and during their pre-flight and all that. But I tell people, when you're getting ready, there's the process of getting ready, and then there's the checklist at the end of all that to make sure that you did the process correctly. And what you want to avoid is running the checklist in the middle of the process, right? So you have some habitual process that you go through all of your connection, make sure you're oriented correctly with your risers and that you're connected up. And then at the end of it all, you just run it down and make sure one last time. And the first thing that we put on in class when we start, gearing up for flight is our leg straps. The last thing that we check before we go running off the cliff is our leg straps, right? Because it's like the most important thing. And then also, don't get into this automatic routine where you're just running that checklist. I've seen people, they're like, okay, A's to my thumbs to my leading edge or check, but they only look at the left side. They're just saying it instead of actually checking it.
Ooh.
So, right, it's just about consistency, and only one time I've seen this, but it could have really resulted in a bad thing. But somebody had their brake line had formed a knot over the pulley, and so everything looked normal. And even when they went to pull on the toggle, it felt like there was pressure, except for there was just no response from the glider. Right. So they were basically had one toggle that didn't do anything and was locked into place. They didn't catch it on their pre-flight, and they couldn't turn to that direction the entire flight until they figured out. And what do you think they were looking at when they couldn't turn? They're looking up at their wing, trying to figure out why isn't it turning, right? But the problem was down at the pulley.
Max Marion is here with us.
Hey.
I think he's driving.
I am. Yeah. How's my audio?
I can
What's
hear
up,
you.
Max?
Hey, what's up, Jordan? How's it going, buddy?
Much love, buddy.
Hey.
Don't.
I'll chime in and then I'll let you guys continue just because I'm driving and I don't want to be too distracted. I'm stopped right now. But yeah, pre-flight, extremely important. I actually ended up having an accident. What was it? About exactly a year ago in New Zealand, and it was I really just chalk it up to distraction during the pre-flight. So I basically launched. I had a brake wrap. That was where I failed in my pre-flight. Was just I was distracted talking to people.
Oh, shoot.
Going into a canyon.
Yeah.
During a conversation, fix it, and so that is incredibly important.
We missed we missed most of what you said. You were breaking up. So maybe when you get home to Wi-Fi, check back in and we'll let it rip one more time. You still there,
All
Max?
right, copy. Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry
Okay.
about that. The
Yeah, no worries.
connection.
No
Hey, can I just
worries.
chime in on that too, though?
Yeah,
Because
bring it.
so Max is definitely the best pilot that I've ever like shook hands with, right? Hands down. I worked with him and I never saw him make a single mistake in 2.5 years of working with him like every single day. And the fact
I'm gonna
that
go ahead and mute myself. Sorry, guys. My audio is probably not doing you guys any favors.
Yeah, no worries, man. Go ahead, Jordan.
but yeah, when Max had that accident, it was eye-opening for me and for most of the community that knew him, because like he's really good, right? I mean, he didn't have any mistakes the entire time that I was working with him, and I was just completely impressed. So when that happened, that was something where I was like, wow, even at that stage in the game, right, being that good of a pilot, you can still miss some trivial little detail that can totally F it up for the rest of,
Right.
and it was a reality check, for a lot of people, because like I say, and I don't know anybody that's better than Max, right? And for Max to have an issue on a pretty, normal flight. So, and I tell my students about that too. I said it's not something where you're gonna, you know, be at attention for like the first 2 years, right? I mean, you got to play the long game and be like that all the way through every single time. And complacency kills. We don't want to let it creep into our routines and, get distracted like Max was saying, but it can happen literally to anybody. So we're not above it as individuals. That's a
Absolutely.
good lesson for us.
Yeah, that was when that happened last year, that was a real eye opener for me. I'm thinking in my mind, like, gosh, man, okay, I gotta, I've had some of these events, messing around. I was at Little Black and I had a toggle wrap. And when I went to grab the brake, I pulled it and then it was stuck in that very position as far as I pulled it. And then I'm like, whoa, what the heck? And it was pulling me into the mountain. So I had to add quite a bit of brake to go straight now and then try to pull it from up top, which could have exacerbated the knot and made it worse. But I was able to pop it out. I learned a real good lesson there about how you pick up your glider and yeah, small things. I think I mentioned that on the last 2 or 3 episodes ago or something like that. How you pick up your brakes is such a simple little thing and can be a whole different situation for you when you get in the air.
Well, how do you pick up your brakes?
So depends on how strong the wind is. Everything is different based on like if it's a low wind day, I usually always just take a peek at make sure my A's are on top. I usually, if it's strong, I'm going to have my brakes already in my hand and I just follow my riser, just to make sure that there's nothing impeding on both sides. We have so many gadgets for free flight. So you're poking at your variometer and, I've got my Tracer Mini or Garmin InReach Mini, and I've got my little globe compass in case there's clouds. I might get sucked up in the clouds. I want to have my globe compass, and I've got my radio. I've got my phone, fly sky high. I mean, it's like a, aircraft. um, there's a lot of things going through your mind in the beginning of the flight. We want to give something away real quick. Can we do that?
Yes.
We decided to name the wheel. What did we say it was going to be? The Wicked Wings wheel.
Wicked Wings logos.
Wicked
Wheel.
Wings logos wheel of plume. Excuse me.
That is
What are we giving away, Bob?
correct.
We're giving away a shirt. That's what we're giving away. Paraglidingtalk.com t-shirt. Paraglidingtalk.com. I was walking up to people at the Salton Sea Flying and I was having them because as soon as they see me, they say it. And I was like, all right, get it on video. Let me hear you say it. Give me your best.
All right, guys. So you guys see my screen now, right? Are you ready?
The Wheel of Names.
You ready?
Spin it.
Off we go.
Spin it to win it.
Brought to you by Wicked Wings Logos. Check out Craig Taylor and his awesome work. Paul Elwood.
Paul Elwood, congratulations. You win a t-shirt. I need you to reach out to me, Paul, with your details. I need to know what size shirt you wear, and I need to know your address so I can send it to you. Please message me at paraglidingtalk.com/contact.
That was so close, almost going to Australia again.
Yeah, and let me
Paul
just
Elwood.
say, now the chat has kept me busy like crazy. All right, I mean it was blowing up.
He said the live stream.
Hey, while you're
froze
writing
for
that
him.
stuff down, the questions are backing up big
Oh,
time.
okay.
And of
Yeah, bring
course, Jim CR120, he's I think he's trying to earn extra points here by putting in the most questions, but he's always good with great questions. All right, so couple more. Let's see here. JP and Jim asked, do you have a preferred weather app? How far ahead do you check the weather?
Thank you, by the way. I'm spread thin tonight.
That's for Jordan, by the way.
You
Oh.
get that, Jordan?
They
Okay,
don't want to
yeah.
hear from us, Jordan. They want to hear from you.
Well, you know, the Windy TY app is really good. It's a nice all around, and I think it's a good starter app because it shows you different layers. And after you look at it enough, you can see that temperature, pressure, wind speed, and all that are related, right? So they kind of move together. But you know, I use the RASP, the Regional Atmospheric Soaring Predictor for Southern California, and then you know, if I'm going to add to that to get more data, then I'll look at maybe a SKU-T sounding. But I find that if I just do local site flying, the very basic soaring predictor is usually enough. But that's also because at my skill level, you know, I'm not really worried about too much of the turbulence, you know. So I think if I was in my first couple of years of flying, more information would be better, and I would probably seek it from 3 different sources just to make sure I understood what I was getting into. You know?
Here's 2 quick questions. First one, PPG Explorer wants to know what your YouTube channel name is, unless you've already given it out. But
I think that's,
channel?
yeah, I think it's just Fly with Jordan, paragliding lessons or something.
Okay. Here's a good question from Dustin. When should new pilots begin carrying a reserve for paragliding?
You know, this question is actually, there's a question like that on the USPA exams, and they ask about, you know, when should you take a reserve with you? And there's some dispute, you know, it depends on who you ask, but as far as I know, the logic there is, you know, if you're not going to be able to use that system, then it's just another point of failure, another, you know, something that could go wrong. And, you know, there are some settings where you could be flying that you just definitely don't need a reserve. You're never going to get to use it. Sand City, right, would be one of those places where you're never going to get like more than 80 feet off the deck. So, you know, if you have one, you're probably going to get a bunch of sand in it, get some damage, or, you know. But yeah, I would say carry it from the beginning, because the reality of it is most people don't have quick and easy access to just take their reserve out of their harness and not fly with it. So they leave it in there because it's been, you know, packed and inspected, and that's it for the year or for 6 months or whatever. So, you know, I'd say unless you're carrying like a front mount reserve, you know, you're pretty much just stuck with whatever harness you have. But if you do, you know, flying of that sort, beach flying and all that, just get a little speed flying harness, you know, and then you don't need to take your reserve on those, I guess. But otherwise, I'd rather have one, man. It's like having your seatbelt, you know, and even if I'm going to the next block, right, I want to have my seatbelt on. You know, one thing I realized too is that in paramotor world, you don't see everybody flying with reserves. You see, you know, I would call it about a little more than half. But what I was thinking about this weekend at that festival, this is not just about the weather anymore. It's about some other dude flying straight into you, and then you both have to chuck your reserves. You know, so as competent of a pilot as you think you might be, if you're flying with other people, then the midair collision is certainly like, you know, a risk, right? So I would say take it anytime, you know, if you're gonna be flying over 500 feet or whatever. So
I got into this debate, I was such a brand new pilot. I had no voice, but I got in this debate with Steve Nowak, and we took the test, and I'm like, how is that? How is it even an option not to take it with you every time? Like, why would Yushpa be saying something along the lines like, well, maybe you should bring, like, I love your illustration about the safety belt. Like, well, maybe you're going to need it. Maybe not. Like, you know, you're flying. Like, if you got a chance, throw that thing. I mean, even if you know you're going to hit the deck, you're only 10 feet off, and you're like, or 20 or 30 feet. Imagine how high you would jump, like off of a house or something. That's about the max for me, especially right now. I just broke 40. If I jumped off a house now, I think it'd be pretty bad. But throw it, just go. I love Gavin McCloud and who Brad Ganuscio talking about. Just throw that sucker, and it's a badge of honor to throw it. Don't be ashamed to toss. And this is more for free flight, by the way. You're flying in crazy turbulent stuff, and weird things are happening. Woody he posted something months back, and he had both of his reserves laying out in a field, and then his glider, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? And I guess he threw his first one, and it got tangled up, so he ended up throwing the second one, and it saved his life. And but he's doing acro with a paramotor.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
But
So,
question for Jordan. This is Larry Jordan. Have you ever thrown a reserve? Have you ever thrown your reserve?
I've only thrown it in training. And actually on all the time I've been flying, I never even put my hand on the handle. You know, it was, I'm glad to have it, you know, not knocking having the option. Right. But yeah, I've never had to use one before.
For the first time last night through practice, not that I was flying. And tonight I did 5 throws. And I've never thrown one before last night. And boy, was it a wake-up call. You don't realize until you have to throw that. And I was on the ground. And the first time, it didn't even get out. I didn't even get it out. Second time I got it out tonight. Probably the first time I didn't get it out either. So it's a shame that a lot of us only get to do it the first time when our life depends on it. We really need to use whatever you can. Take grandma's pocketbook and fill it with sand. Use anything you can to get the feel of that.
I like that. Zip that thing closed full of sand.
We actually, as you know, Robert, we're actually going to be introducing one at Palm Bay this year, our reserve simulator.
Yeah, I like it.
It's been fun to just play with that. I didn't realize how bad I was.
Yeah, that was a learning experience for me, even doing it in the clinic, because I was flying with a setup that I had a front mount, and I thought it was perfectly fine. You know, I have a decent, you know, mountain flying setup, but when I went to the clinic and I threw it, I actually came down like almost squarely on my back, and I wasn't in the upright position. And I totally changed everything after that experience, because I was like, dude, no way do I want to be under a reserve and come down like that, right? I mean, that could be like 5 meters a second and just get slammed long ways. But, you know, I have seen a couple of times, just going back to where the reserve thing might cause more problems than it solves. And forgive me if I get your name wrong, buddy, but I think it was Brandon Schmidt I saw back at Saboba launch, and then he was trying to get into a thermal right off of launch, but it was really light, and his reserve tumbled out of his container.
Oh
and
no.
and it caught on his boot. Remember how everybody says don't have the hooks on your boot, right? Because you can get your feet stuck in the lines. Well, the reserve, when it caught air, it turned him upside down, and
Oh,
then his main canopy was disabled, and now he's coming down, you know, upside down onto the hillside.
head first.
So
Oh,
yeah, and there really wasn't the room on that flight to even use a reserve, because it was supposed to be a sledder, and he was just maintaining at about maybe 70 feet off of the hillside. And
oh my word.
so that's where I've seen it go horribly wrong, to have the reserve on a flight that you wouldn't really been able to use it, you know. So but other than that, and then also, you know, like you're saying, just get rid of it. I mean, I've been asked repeatedly, like, how much altitude do you need to throw a reserve? And I tell them it's not just about altitude. It could slow down your rotation if you're in some kind of locked out spiral or something. And but one extra point to throw on there is that I do know of a case where the pilot went for the reserve instead of controlling the canopy, and there was no room to use the reserve. She didn't have the altitude at all, and she missed the opportunity to get her canopy back in control because she was reaching for the reserve instead. Right. So
Yikes.
sometimes you just don't have that. I mean, if you're only 20 feet off the ground,
Forget it.
and your bridle's like, you know, almost that long, so
Right.
like,
So it's going to hit you on the head, insult to
right,
injury.
yeah. By the time it comes out, you're already on the ground. So
What's your go-to glider these days?
oh, I've been eyeballing the Punk by BGD. I think I want to pick that up next season.
Nice. And that's an acro wing?
No, it's actually a solid B. It's not on the high end or low end, but I'll be honest, man, it's just a sexy glider. I like the way it looks.
Those are cool gliders. I saw a couple at the fly-in this weekend. That was cool. Well, hello there. My wife decided to come and sit down next to me. I'm like, you want to come on the show? She goes, no, I'm just going to sit here.
This is really good. The cinnamon flavored one.
By the way, this show is brought to you by iFly Indiana Powered Paragliding. If you're interested in flying paramotors, no better place to get the proper training than iFlyIndiana.com. Kevin and his team can get your feet off the ground. And also, I wanted to give a shout to all the Patreons that support the show on Patreon and PayPal. You guys are awesome. You keep the show going, and we have some great things lined up. We just keep on putting the investment back into the show, and with all kinds of stuff. We got stuff planned out for this year. It's going to be amazing. And I do want to say thank you for making way for us to be able to go to the Salton Sea Fly-In. Me and the two boys, your contribution made way for that. And I got to fly two different paramotors, the Atom 80 and the Moster 185. Super cool, man. Really, really fun. So thank you all for contributing to the show. If you're interested in supporting the show on Patreon, you can follow the links in the description. And for the price of like a cup of coffee, you can support the show and learn something that you may save your life with or somebody else. So support the show if you can. And I get it if you can't, but I really appreciate those that have invested in the show. Really appreciate you guys. Don't forget about Resurgence PPG, by the way. ResurgencePPG.com is the website. If you're interested in supporting our men and women of uniform, you can make a tax-deductible donation to Resurgence PPG. You can do that by donating to Resurgence PPG. If you're sponsoring, when you do, you're sponsoring those who have put their lives on the line for our freedom. Reach out to Todd Scandrett at resurgenceppg.com. And so this year, 20 candidates is the goal, 20 in 2020. So let's try to make it happen. Go check out his website if you haven't gone there. Really appreciate the sponsor of the show. Max, are you still around? Is he not there? I think he logged out. I heard the ding.
Yeah, I think he got thrown off the internet.
Well, Anthony Peregrino, thank you so much, by the way, for
No worries.
picking up those questions.
Hey, I do have a question. Since we spent last weekend at the Salton Sea, it was fantastic. I got there on Thursday about 1 o'clock, and it was the busiest I've ever seen it. So it probably had more people there than they did the year before on a Saturday or Sunday. So, and Jordan, you were there, right?
Yeah.
You saw the sky was pretty crowded at times. What is some advice for some of the new people that obviously, you know, are excited to get in the air and so forth? I did see a lot of right of way ignored, not a lot, but some right of way ignored, which is obviously quite critical in the air. So any kind of tips, advice for some new people who want to get in there and so forth?
Well, that's a really unique situation because you don't see that many paramotor guys flying next to each other typically. And so I would guess that most of them don't even know right away, you know, because that's not even a part of training really. And but yeah, it looks like flocks of humans out there, didn't it? Like just looks like swarms of insects or something. And it was fascinating, man. I don't think I've ever seen that many people buzzing around in such a small space as that. But you know, for my own part, I would just get off the runway because it seems like, and I used to tell my students this at Torrey, there's 4 pilots, or maybe it's 3, 4 pilots that you want to look out for, right? It's the new guy who doesn't know what he's doing and he hesitates. So you don't want to be flying next to that guy.
Yeah.
But then worse than that, then you have the, you know, guy from out of the country. He doesn't speak English and you don't know what his standards are. Right,
He
maybe
drives on the wrong side of the road.
right, you know, and then maybe they just, you know, signed the waiver or whatever, got into the site, but they didn't even realize what they were reading or looking at, and they're just in a hurry to get their flight in because they're on vacation or something, right? So they have a different kind of precedent. And then I tell them that the worst person though is the local, because they're buzzing the LZ, trying to show off, trying to get the attention. They don't go anywhere else, right? They just go back and forth in front of everybody else so that they can get the attention. And they're not worried about it. They're at a skill level where they've convinced themselves that it's not a big deal, you know, to fly in proximity like that and to be around other people. And I think we saw that at the paramotor function, you know, for the guys that want to show off and they have some years of flying experience, you know, they're going to be trying to do that in front of everybody. And, you know, you said you hadn't seen the years before this one. And I think that was part of the problem in those years prior. We had, I won't name names, but we had some people, you know, that were doing acro like on the LZ, right? Doing wing drag turns and stuff like that. And the park got upset about it, tried to kick them out. And the other people that were sharing the LZ, of course, they don't like it because it dominates the LZ. But, you know, it was weird to see what we get in paragliding in a paramotor festival. That's the first time I've seen that really.
So maybe a suggestion is to get, obviously, like you said, get out of the LZ, get out of the area, go explore and so forth. Okay, how about that long trailing ribbon? How'd you feel about that? I mean, it was pretty cool to see, no doubt. Was there you think there was any kind of safety issue involved?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, even if you ate it up in your prop, I mean, you just go land, right? So now I guess if 2 people started eating it up in their prop, it would look like those dogs on All Dogs Go to Heaven, you know, where they're sharing the noodle.
That's great. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. You gotta have some moderate skills to go and pick that thing up, and I was not ready for that. I flew around it a couple times, and I'm thinking, not on somebody else's equipment. If I waste somebody else's motor because I'm dillying around. That was cool though, man. That was one of those never forget that.
Yeah,
those moments.
that sand out there was not soft and fluffy, man. It was crusty. It was hard, and I don't know about some of the people that wanted to foot drag the Salton Sea, but the color was amber, and you know, I wouldn't want that on my body or my equipment.
root beer. What they say, you can only
Root beer.
eat 2 fish
Yeah.
a week or something like that.
Yeah. Come.
They recommend only.
You don't
2
need a
fish.
pole. You don't need a pole. You can just go to the shore and they're floating, you know?
Yeah. They're not completely dead. Yeah. Yeah. That was a blast, man. I do wish I would have came over and hung out with you. I just wasn't sure if it was you. You know what it was? The chops threw me off.
They're gone.
Yeah. I didn't know. Yeah. The glasses and the chops. I was like, no. I know. No.
Hey, Robert,
Yeah.
Kevin Can Fly wants to know, what wings did you fly?
Oh, yeah. Great question. The Ozone Spider. And I loved it.
Both
Great
times?
wing. Ozone. No, that was the most time that I spent. The other one was the Gin Pegasus. I don't know what it was. It's a Gin glider, and that was great too. Felt equally. That was an A wing that I flew with the top 80 or Atom 80.
Carb.
Gin. What's the Gin?
Gin carb?
I don't know. Actually, I'll have to go back and look at the footage. It was Chris
Predator Paramotor.
from
Yeah.
Predator Paramotors.
Chris
wing.
Holbert.
Yeah.
I think
Actually,
that was
no.
a carve.
It was
Josh
his.
Bowden's rig.
It was his students. Josh Bowden let me fly the Ozone. Both great gliders though. I liked them both. I was impressed. It's a little weird to transition from free flight to motor for me because I felt like I lost some of my connection. Like when I get in, I fly a Pegasus 2. Dustin, thank you, Dustin. Dustin's actually the guy who let me use his motor. Chris just sent me a link. Sweet. Yeah. It was, I got distracted. There was a squirrel and sorry about that.
Squirrel.
We were talking about the Ozone and Gin. Oh, I lose the connection. I felt like I wasn't really in tune with my glider. I need to spend some time on a motor. I can tell that there was such a different, the hang points are in a different place. The feedback in the seat is not there, like in a free flight. Like
Feels a lot different.
Oh yeah. When I free fly, man, I'm in it. Like I'm a part of the machine. You know what I mean? Like
It's like a free flight harness hugs you.
Yeah.
Whereas a paramotor, you're just sitting in it. And
Right.
it's there and you're just sitting in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love free flight. And I will say this, I got really inspired to paramotor over that. We went into the mountains and anyways, that's for another story. If you have any other questions for Jordan, I don't want to take up any more of his time because I really appreciate his information. Maybe tell us a little bit about you shared about what your go-tos are for your weather. What do you have for, like, if you're going on a trip, what's your go-to for weather abroad, if you will?
Well, actually, that soaring predictor, they use that all the way in the UK, and they have several different regions that they use it for.
Excellent.
But yeah, I found that I haven't really traveled so much off the West Coast from Baja all the way up to Pacifica. There's just tons of really good flying sites. I did make it inland to Utah on a couple of occasions, but I'm not a cross country pilot. So if I was going to be doing more of that, then I would definitely seek out better weather resources than what I do. But I'm kind of just, a local bum. So when I go to the site, it looks good. I stick my finger in the air and that's all I need.
What's your go-to for paramotoring?
Oh yeah, well, paramotor, I find you can almost just check general, weather, and I don't really have anything that I look at for paramotor. And it's really about finding the stable air in the morning and the evenings most of the time. So, and then if you fly coastal, then it's like paragliding, it's usually all day, you can just do it all day.
Yeah. What do you do for, like, if you're going to fly paramotor somewhere else, what do you do for checking airspace? You go to the vectors? What's your go-to for that?
You know, I'm pretty bad about that too, man. I have plenty of people like showing me where I should be flying and where I shouldn't. And at this stage, I should definitely be making those types of decisions. But I will say that's my weak area. You know, I don't. It's like a language. If you don't use it, then you kind of forget about all the little, you know, syntactical stuff. But I don't use the airspace sectionals that much because, like I said, I'm usually just at my park. But
Yeah.
that being said, you know, I was thoroughly shocked when I first started flying Crestline because I was in my hang glider and working my way up to 8,400 feet in a thermal, and
Got to
I
visit.
was facing north, and I was like, holy crap, there's a 737 bearing down on me right now. And
No way.
yeah, and but at the time I didn't realize that there was a flight route right over the launch. Like that just seems so crazy that that would even be the thing that I didn't think about it, right? But that's a very real danger at our site, that if you get up high enough, you're gonna see some cross traffic in there. So
Yeah. See, it's different with a paramotor. You're cheating. You just kind of fly up and you go as high as you want. You go, you know, where you want. So you're like an airplane. For us, we earned that altitude. By the time we got there, we're like, hey, what's up? I'm in this thermal 747. You can just stay over there. You know
We'll
what I'm
see.
saying? When the business hits the fan, it's like, oh, you know what? Have you ever heard about this? The wash from helicopters taking people out from a distance.
Yeah, I'd say if you had like enough of a wind blowing it at you, you could probably experience that. But we would get them out there at Torrey all the time. I never, you know, I'm not saying that you couldn't, right? Because obviously that's a lot of air moving. But yeah. But you know
Yeah.
what you were saying earlier, that's something that I bring up a lot, is the paramotor feels like having the cheat code on a video game, doesn't it? Because like you
It
can go
does.
anywhere, right? You can go anywhere you want. And
Yeah.
I say, you know, expanding on that, it's like I find just like with a video game that you have a cheat code for, it kind of gets old really quick, right? Because
Right.
you can go do everything. So what I find is in paramotor, you'll fly the same site, you know, a handful of times, and then you'll start getting bored. You'll want to hit a new site, or you want to get your buddies, or you want to start, you know, doing activities with that site that make it interesting again. But with a paragliding site, you could fly every day for 20 years at the same site, and it's a different flight almost every single time.
Yeah.
It depends on how much you know, your skill level, and how you apply it in the moment, right? And in paramotor, it's just about how much gas do you have in your tank. You know?
That's what I
Yeah.
love about it, is I'm lazy and I don't like flying in circles. So I'm like, yeah. That's where that.
What motor do you have? What size motor do you have? You just have an 80 cc, Sean?
Oh, Sean.
I'm with a Vito 185.
Oh, 185. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to the moon. What about you, Jordan?
I have a Black Devil 180, 173, I think is what it is. Yeah.
172.
Beast.
Yeah.
That's
That's
what
been really
that's what,
fun for solo flight. It gets you off the ground pretty quick. I'm only 140, so.
Is there I'm considering getting into the tandem business, not for a living or anything. I just would like to be able to take friends and family. Do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, come see me because I'm the tandem administrator now, so I can help you.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
how much time do I need to set apart to get it done?
well, I tell people realistically, you should be flying, you know, 5 years before you start looking at tandem, and
Okay.
that's a generalization because I can't, you know, I don't really know how much experience you have in your flying. I mean, I can see your numbers or whatever, but
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, though, is that you want to make sure you have all of your mistakes out of the way,
Yeah.
right? And then start putting other people's, you know, spine in your lap.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Now I like that. So you would say at 5 years, then consider it from there.
Right, and I've talked to a few people that, you know, and it's admirable, right? We find a passion, we want to share it with others, and like, and what I think it is because it's kind of a solitary sport. Once you're up there, you're by yourself, and you just want to share that magic with somebody, right? So
Right.
it's relatable, and you can see like, look, I told you it was amazing, right? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but
yeah.
when it comes down to it, though, you know, it's just if you were to injure somebody, you know, there's the feeling of guilt and, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But then also, like, you cost them their productivity and their job. You know,
Right.
if they're injured enough, even if they don't decide to sue you, you could have their insurance company come after you for medical damages.
Right.
You know, and once the lawyers get a hold of you, one of the things they're going to look at is your experience level and your equipment. You know, and it's pretty much all your fault. You know,
Right.
like if you hurt somebody, it's all your fault. You cannot say, oh, the wind did something weird to me, or I didn't know that that was going to happen, right? I
Right.
mean, it's still your fault. So that level of responsibility, you know, even though we want all of the good that comes with being able to share the experience, like until we're mature enough to say, okay, like like a surgeon, right, or some kind of doctor, you got somebody's life in your lap,
Yeah.
right? And your decisions make a huge difference on whether or not they're going to be walking the rest of their life, or you know, whatever else. So
100%.
Kind of like riding a motorcycle too, you know. I mean, you got a passenger on the back, they're your responsibility. I mean, yeah.
So this is the website, Fly with Jordan, flywithjordan.info. What can they expect to pay for training?
Oh, well, if you scroll down just a little more, there it is. It's the I have unlimited lessons, P1 to P4 for $2,200. And what I found is that when I first started instructing, we weren't giving people enough training. And so they'd get like 3 to 5 days of instruction and they'd be cut loose. And that really hurt their confidence to carry on in the sport, because, you know, you can't learn paragliding in 3 to 5 days, right? But what I found was a lot of those guys were making the decision to terminate their training early because, you know, they didn't want to spend an extra 250 or 350 per day to get out there and have another day. And then if the weather kind of sucked, or if they showed up late, you know, or whatever, then they weren't getting their money's worth. So I found that to be the biggest barrier in instruction, was having to contend with the financial decision that the student was up against. So in creating the unlimited lessons, you pay tuition and now you just come to class. You know, if you want to come for 2 hours or 1 hour or catch one flight, or if you want to go for 8 hours, it's all the same. And so it takes all that pressure where the student has to, you know, think about their time and their energy, and it just lets them be a part of training, right? So, and it's a skill-based progression, right? It's not like you go 2 days or 3 days and that that's the metric, right? I mean, you could learn more on that one first day than you did in the 3 days together, or vice versa. So it really kind of opens up all the opportunities. And one of the biggest things in my school that I found contributes to the overall learning curve is just having the community of students be able to talk with each other.
Oh yeah,
And
that's huge.
right. That's something I actually picked up from Torrey Pines, you know, because they had the Vogely group. And that was a good way for everybody to, you know, coordinate with each other on where they were going next.
Love it.
So
Well,
you're predominantly in Southern California, right? San Bernardino, for a lot of people in the chat probably don't know, it's only about 2 hours from the coast. So you're out of SoCal, right?
Yeah, and actually, the Andy Jackson Flight Park and the Crestline Soaring Society, that's the flagship flying site of North America. It's got more flyable days than any other site. We can do cross country out of there, you know, quite a good distance. We can do a little bit of ridge soaring. We can do convergence flying, and we can do thermic all at the same site. And we have the largest landing zone. I call it the best kept landing zone, you know, just because of its size. But yeah, it's got a lot of really good attributes, and the training hill, you know, or the Marshall launch is actually better than most training hills that I've ever seen. So
Love Marshall.
Yeah, and the coolest part is, if you get one flight and it's straight to the bottom, that's still 20 minutes of airtime.
Yeah, I was going to
You
say
know,
mine was
yeah.
22 minutes. It was great.
I thought the coolest part was for anybody in the chat, they want to come out and do training with you, that Robert Michaels will put you up in his house for the week. So
That's right. It's a little far away for that, but you are welcome.
bring your tent though, just in case it gets a little crowded.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to be on the show. It's always a pleasure to pick your brain, and you're always such a great guest. We'll have to do it again very soon. I did have a special announcement. I think some people were waiting for. We do have a new sponsor. The guys from Torrey Pines Gliderport are sponsoring the show now. So Torrey Pines, you made it onto the show. I think Max was going to make some announcement about that tonight, but looks like we lost him. So if you're interested in joining for the after show, just let me know in the chat real quick before you log out. I just need to know your email. If you're one of the Patreon supporters, you can join us for the after show. And it's where some really fun action happens, by the way. So thank you. Go to paraglidingtalk.com. Check out some of the other shows that maybe you missed. And there's some links in the description if you want to listen to some of the old school podcasts on Apple or iTunes. And then also it's on Google Play. And we might even put it on some other social media stuff. And you can follow some of the live action if you are on Instagram. It's Paragliding Talk on Instagram. So anyways, thanks guys. We're going to go to the after show. Again, appreciate the moderators, Sean, Larry, Anthony, Craig Taylor. Appreciate you guys. And we will see you on the next one. If I don't see you on there, I'll see you in there. And so thanks again.